providing them the support during the execution of the audit. Even though our investments are controlled by an outsourced financial advisor, and they are also under the control of our investment committee, from NTA we give support to both by taking all the administrative tasks that are derivated from the investments, such as the preparation of subscriptions and other administrative tasks. If we move to the administration support that we give to our CTF, we of course we ensure the continuous compliance of the German regulations and also the compliance with the German foundation authorities. We manage all the relationship with the providers, and most of the times, because we go with a joint effort with 3 CTFs, we usually take better deals than if we would go individually. We take care of all the insurances, and also under the same principle that by ensuring the 3 foundations together, we got a better deal than going every foundation individually. We keep the governance documentation. We have an active relationship with the German Foundation Authority. All the IT system is also handled by our officers because everybody works remotely in the countries and in Germany. And we created this system online so we can share our files, and despite our physical distance, to be able to work closely. And finally, we also give support with human resources like recruitment processes, contract management, payroll management, and so on. And the last group of services that we give is the reporting and communication services. And here we focus on 3 things. The first one, it's like to support the funds with their communication strategy and the implementation of this strategy. We support to prepare events and conference. We also support them by helping with documentation for their board meetings, and preparing brochures and all this type of things. Then we give the CTF supports in the fundraising, not fundraising, but preparing the reporting for our donors, and also keep the tracking of all the contributions that we have received, and we give some support when it's time to prepare fundraising events. And one of the nice things of NTA in that terms of communications is that we are a platform for the 3 foundations to share knowledge. So we do it in different shapes, but when there is some relevant information that affects one of the foundations, we see that it can be applied to the other 2, and then we share this information. If someone goes to a very interesting conference or listens to a very interesting webinar, then we prepare an internal brown bag, and everybody from the foundations can get this knowledge. And this is still in development. We have our internal Wikipedia, we share documents, but mostly the sharing of the knowledge. And that, I think, it adds a good value to the 3 foundations.
It absolutely does, and before maybe even the next slide, I think that's one of the, we'll be talking about this during the recommendations or the learnings, but how the economies of scale and the efficiencies of time really are so evident in NTA. When one organization, there's a slight innovation in one organization, it's almost immediately shared with the others, and so it's a great learning, and even I would say continuous learning process. But let's move on and talk about the management and the governance of NTA, because that's a crucial issue, of course, in the success of any organization, let alone conservation trust funds who might be, in possession of an investment portfolio of 20 to 40 million euro, but with few staff. And so having that ability to have the support of an organization like NTA, I think is crucial to both keep down the administrative costs, but also to ensure that the program runs smoothly, because if in the absence of an organization like NTA, too many CTF resources could be and might need to be allocated towards the back office support that NTA provides. But back to the management structure. As you can see, there are three distinct organizations involved, though with one or maybe more than one key link, which is the German federal government, in terms of the funding support that's been provided to the three organizations. CNF has, like PONT and Blue Action, a supervisory board to whom the executive directors report and are responsible to. And at the beginning, the management of NTA was a challenge because we were remote. It was new. There were procedures that weren't necessarily all in place. And again, this will be talked about in a few minutes in relation to what we have learned. But currently, the management structure that we have is working very, very well, and I'll talk about it and a few of the practices that have led to its success. So as you see, the three executive directors, actually, Alba has maybe not the privilege, but the distinct being in a distinct situation of having three separate bosses with three separate regions, with three separate management styles, communication styles. But Alba's done really a fantastic job of adapting to that and in fact leading us in the direction we need to go. So as you see, NTA has one director and then three other staff to whom Alba reports, to report to Alba, that is. Thinking about what has made the last year of transition and evolution of NTA more consistent and more of a success is something we could talk about in the next slides, and that's the practices that we have instituted, again, probably over the last year, to make sure that there is that day-to-day management. And so there is a focal point, and that's one of the executive directors of the three conservation trust funds. Every 6 months is appointed the focal point. I was the first last year. Miriam from PONT a few months ago, and Marcus is currently Marcus Kniga is currently the focal point. And what the focal point does is manages the daily non-programmatic communication with NTA. So PONT has daily interactions with Alba and or NTA about programmatic or technical areas in terms of management, in terms of problem solving, and in terms of communicating critical issues to the other executive directors. This is the role of the focal point, and we found that it's good to keep it on a rotating basis, because that allows both the executive directors to know NTA better, but also ensures that NTA is getting the support necessary throughout the year from each of the executive directors, making us feel more bought in or more involved in NTA. We do have meetings, of course. Physically, we meet twice a year, and we have conference calls at least twice a year that are scheduled. Now, if there's something important ad hoc comes up, that can also be arranged. But in the last 6 months, we have a system that works fairly well. We'll all be meeting again in January, and we have a call in March. And these are to discuss issues of strategy, needs, bottlenecks, performance, and to plan for the next 6 months. And what helps us do that planning on a bi-weekly or monthly or quarterly basis is regular phone calls between NTA staff, and that's Alba and the entire team here, and the three executive directors, where we are provided updates. We're able to ask and answer questions on what is happening in order to make decisions, as the three executive directors travel quite a bit, some of us, and are in multiple time zones in different countries and parts of the world. Occasionally, what we've learned is that it was difficult to get a consent of a time to speak. And so what we have developed is when there is an issue that needs a decision. And again, as NTA is a still evolving organization, there are some things that we still need to decide how to do or how to do better. The executive director, Alba, will create a memo, send it to us, and we can respond, within 24 hours usually. And that is the decision that is taken. And that's the way that we make decisions, rather than trying to get us all on a phone call where we can agree on something. So I think it's increased really reduced workloads, but also increased our efficiency as four organizations, let's say. And then there's the a standard kind of management tool in terms of a work plan. Everyone needs it, but this work plan is ideally for those of us not in Frankfurt. So that's for the Blue Action, PONT, and CNF. We have access to it online, so we're able to see immediately the updates, where we are, if there are delays, and again, that helps so much in order for us to concentrate on our core mission, which is conservation. There are I've alluded to the learnings and the challenges a number of times already, and so that they're really understood and remembered. We wanted to go through them, or a few of them, one by one, and I think maybe we'll be able to answer any of the questions that you have about these, in a few minutes when we finalize our presentation. Challenges in learning. So again, if you recall, July 2016, NTA was established. September 2016, services are being provided, and so that was very helpful. But also it was, I can honestly say, it was a bit chaotic, because we didn't have established communication protocols or documented procedures in place, and so it's understandable in a startup environment like NTA was, but recommended for anyone thinking about replicating something like NTA is to begin with structures as far as possible, and standard operating procedures in place. One of the other challenges, and of course this is not unique to NTA or the CTFs, is the challenge of remote management in terms of a direct line management as well. There's one issue in terms of time zone differences and communication, but that's easily resolved. And I think we've also resolved the issue and the line management function by appointing a focal point who is responsible for that day-to-day support, or being a sounding board for decisions, which allows the other two CTFs as well to benefit without having to spend all three of our resources at the same time.
Yeah, because at the beginning, one of the challenges that the EDs had is that they had to spend too much time in the management of a Nature Trust Alliance, and that would take their valuable time to work on their program. And so at the beginning, we would recommend someone that wants to replicate the system of NTA to have the management dedicating some time at the beginning with the upcoming company. Another challenge that we had found, it was the different requirements from the three CTFs, not only because they are in different locations and they have sometimes different donors, or they are in the different stage of development, but also because there are three styles of management that they differ from one to the other. And then NTA had to adapt to the three different management styles, but I think that the three EDs also had to adapt with each other.
Yeah. And coming specifically to that point, what I have learned, and I think the other executive directors, including Alba, have learned, is that in order for an endeavor like this to succeed, people need to be really active listeners and be a bit flexible. Maybe not compromising on your values, but being able to see something from a long-term perspective, rather than making maybe a short-term decision that could be detrimental to the organization.
Mm-hmm. And one of the last challenge that we wanted to talk about today, it's about the expectations. When the three EDs join NTA, they didn't have the same expectations. Then the work done could be satisfying for one foundation, but not for the other. So we had to find a level where everybody came into a meeting and we discuss what are the expectations for NTA, which is the minimum level of quality that we need, that it was set very high. And so NTA adapted to this, and the ADs also adapted with each other.
Then this is continuing, of course, yeah, with the recommendations, the challenges. Let's talk about some of the benefits, because there are real tangible and not only economic benefits, yeah, to having an agency, a shared services organization like NTA. I mean, of course, there are the economies of scale and efficiencies in developing, or yeah, in developing procedures. Once a procedure is developed or a system is created, it's used not by just NTA or one other conservation trust fund, but by 3 of us, and so. You know, it also helps that, and this would be a recommendation, of course, that's when that because we have similar donor as well as, no, not the same, but similar donor as well as legal compliance and requirements, that an agency like an organization like NTA is able to do to address that at the same time with simple conversations directly with the agency responsible, rather than 3 separate conversations with the agency responsible. Coming to a more economic benefit of NTA, it's the to have a pooled approach. So take an example, a number, 50 million euro being invested is more of a weighty, potentially more important client than 3 clients who have 15 million. And so we're able, or NTA is able to negotiate better prices with banks, investment advisors, and auditors, for example.
And this is not also in terms of money, it's also in terms of time. The time that we spend discussing with a future possible auditor, it applies not only to one foundation, but to 3 foundations. And so we are saving money by saving also time.
We've already discussed, or Alba alluded to, knowledge sharing and the ability to continuously improve. Once a template exists in one organization, it can be transferred to another organization. It can be then, and usually is therefore, improved and shared back with the organization who originated or who originally had that template. So there really is this ability of 4 organizations to learn from each other in a continuous improvements cycle, I could say. One of the, I think, important for many of those in the audience today, topics is investment, of course. And so, Alba, maybe you could talk about why or how NTA supports the 3 CTFs to gain the most out of our investments.
Well, we have 2 investment committees. One is for CNF and PONT jointly, and the other one is for Blue Action. The investment committee of CNF and PONT was created earlier, and therefore we joined the forces to define the investment policy and our asset strategy allocation and so on. So again, this was safe for the 2 foundations because work was done once and applied 2 times. And then when Blue Action joined, the policy is different, but of course, like a big part of the work was already done, and then Blue Action could benefit from it. What NTA, the role of NTA with the investment, as I mentioned before, we have investment advisors, we have investment managers, and we have an investment committee. So the role role of NTA in the investments is purely administrative. So we make sure that our subscriptions are sent on time. We make sure we try to process our withholding taxes to get them back, and so on. But this sounds like a little job, but it's really time consuming, and it would be a bit of a pity that someone with the capacity to be helping the conservation of nature would be wasting their time doing this administrative task. So that's the input of NTA. Another of the benefits that I see is that because we are 3 foundations and we are different, and we are all of us growing, there is a continuous improvement, because when one CTF develops something new, the others apply it right away. And I'm not going to say it's a competition, because it's not a competition, but when something is improving one side, it's immediately applied to other foundations, and so it gives us the possibility to grow further without not much investment.
An excellent point, and I wanted to come back to it's not necessarily a shared services benefit, but about NTA as an organization. Obviously, it's a nonprofit. It generates no revenue, and it relies on the contributions of currently the 3 CTFs to whom you provide services. I think importantly for those listening to know, that is done on a basis of actual time spent. And so there's a tool that the members of NTA have that they'll spend a certain amount of time a day or a week on a CTF task, and therefore, and based on the time allocation, the costs are then split according to that percentage, between the 3 CTFs. And speaking of a CTF and a new CTF, one of the benefits, I think, especially for Blue Action Fund, was that because of the experience of CNF and PONT and the experience at NTA, especially with German legislation and regulations, Blue Action was able to be set up in a very fast and efficient, not just fast, but in an efficient manner that would have taken, I don't know, quite a bit longer had NTA or an organization like NTA not been in existence. And Alba, maybe you could say something about that, because I know you were involved in it.
Well, indeed, when you are a family and you have a big brother, you learn quicker how to do all the stuff. So I would say it's the same example. One of the benefits of NTA is that we are making the foundations to save money. By, for example, we save on personal expenses. If we would not exist, PON would need a financial director, CNF would need a financial director, and Blue Action would need a financial director. They would need to be paid, and they would need an office to visit it, and they would have all these human resources expenses. With NTA, all of them have their financial director here with us. So we are saving in duplication of positions in each conservation trust fund, and also in the expenses that an employee represents. As mentioned before, we also join our forces at time to negotiate with providers, and that also implies some savings for the foundations. And as also mentioned before, we are saving on working hours. We recently had to do a tender process for an audit, and that represented a lot of hours of work. And we did it once, and we will apply it for 3 foundations. And on these 4 examples, we see a great opportunity of saving for the 3 foundations. And so after talking about the challenges and the benefits, maybe we could talk a bit about the recommendations that we would give to someone if they are thinking to start an NTA somewhere else in the world. For me, as a director, I would say that it would be really important at the beginning to have the clear structure. So which departments do you need, who's going to run it, and how is going to run it, and how is going to be the relationship with the partners, and so on. Also, to make sure that there are procedures already existing, and then you can start working, and of course these procedures can always be adapted, but that at least there is a base to work and take decisions on. And also it would be very important that the foundations joining the partnership would discuss the services that they need in advance, to make sure that everybody's in the same line, and that everybody needs the same things, and it's not really, doesn't really differ.
I can comment on that from experience, of course, but I won't be too detailed. The point is, of course, that due to the ages, let's say, organizational ages of the 3 conservation trust funds, there were absolutely different requirements and services that were necessary. And so I think that needs to be, at the beginning, communicated not only between the 3 CTFs, but within an agency like NTA, who's providing those shared services. And it's not just about the services themselves. It's also about, I think, the spirit of the services. We certainly, I in particular, do not look at NTA as a service provision organization. That's the function of NTA, but the spirit of NTA is much more, and has developed into much more of a collaborative and partnership-oriented approach from both sides. And I think that those expectations, whether they are that way or different, at the beginning need to be clear between all stakeholders. That opportunity for misunderstanding and miscommunication.
And that's why it's very important to establish a way of easy and clear communication between the executive directors and the shared services, indeed. Also, when we talk about that, it's important to clearly define what are the shared services. We don't limit to that. So NTA has shared services for the 3 foundations, but if one of them has a specific need, we can also provide it, meaning that not everything that we do, we need to do it for the 3 foundations. Mm-hmm. It was also a key change in NTA to set up an easy decision-making tool. As mentioned before, the EDs travel a lot, and it's always different time zones, so it's not always easy to find a moment to just have a Skype call and decide on something that it needs to be decided in the next 24, 48 hours. And that delayed sometimes a few processes and created few frustrations. So it was very key for NTA to set up this way of taking decisions via memo, where we present the problem and we also present several options of solutions, and then the EDs vote. And what I found also very important is that we are sitting in Frankfurt, we are not in the program, we are not on the field with our teams, but we like to be involved in what's happening, and we feel very proud of all the results that our foundations are getting, and also the prizes. And so it's for me very important to that the foundations involve the staff of NTA into what's going on.
Yeah, I think for NTA's future or continued success, that's something that we will continue, especially because none of the executive directors look at NTA as solely a service provider. You are part of our success. You are part of our team, and therefore, to make you feel more a part of the work that we do, because we're not here to do the investments, or we're not here to communicate with the banks or the auditors necessarily. We're in the regions where we work to improve conservation impacts and management effectiveness of protected areas. And so making you, or NTA in particular, staff feel part of Blue Action or CNF or PONT is an important responsibility of the executive directors. And thinking about the recommendations from maybe a bit more of a meta level, there are three, and they're fairly obvious. Yeah, they're nothing that anyone involved in organizational development wouldn't know or suggest. But expectations are absolutely necessary to be clarified at the beginning. Having certain structures in place, but certain structures and procedures in place at the beginning will reduce the likelihood, in fact, of misunderstanding. And then therefore the key, and there's usually one or two keys to the success that I think of any organization that people agree on. You've got to be a very good communicator, and you must be able to hire the right people. And I think an organization like NTA, as a developing startup organization or in the consolidation stage, is well, we're lucky. Yeah, we're lucky that we've got four staff who are committed to the work that you do. And so when you're thinking about a structure like NTA for another area of the world, there are a number of qualifications that you would want to have in your staff, and so sometimes that would be language. Obviously, you need to be here in Frankfurt. We need to have some German speakers. We need to have a native English speaker for our reporting. But we also need to have people who are committed to conservation and obviously very, very flexible.
This was our little input for you today, and now we are going to be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hi, this is Katie from the CFA. I'm sorry I was a little late joining. I want to thank both Alba and Geof for the presentation. This was wonderful. We have had a couple of questions already come through as chat messages, so maybe we can go through those first and then open it up to anybody else on the phone. I think you answered the question about the legal structure, that it is a nonprofit organization. Another question that came through is whether all three funds are legally based in Germany.
Yeah, the three funds are legally based in Germany, but NTA, it's not a non-profit organization. We are a GBR, that it would be like a limited society, I guess, equivalent in the States, but we don't generate any income. As Geof explained, we cover the expenses of NTA according to the time that we spend with every foundation, and so every quarter we calculate how much was it, and we divide that by the foundations, and they make the payments to our capital, but we don't generate any income. Actually, based on our legal status, we are not allowed to give services to anyone else besides our foundations.
Thanks. So the next question that came in was, I think you've answered, but Camilla, if your question about the funding model wasn't answered enough, can you let us know?
Thank you. It was answered.
So the next question was about competition for funds from the CTFs and what NTA does in a situation where two or more of your foundations might be targeting the same donor or looking for the same funding source.
Well, this situation doesn't exist. The main donor of our three foundations is basically the same, that it's KfW, by BMZ through KfW. And then because the purpose of the foundations are different, the pots that the government have for every foundation are also different, and there is no competition existing. And then also local donors that we have, they don't compete with each other because we are in different geographical, the foundations are in different geographical positions. So we don't have any situation where there is conflict for donors.
And I could add to that, yeah, for the reasons that Alba mentioned, that the different geographical areas, the purposes, but also importantly the stages of development of the various CTFs. Of course, everyone wants to grow their endowment or to have a larger sinking fund, but due to the Herculean efforts of board members and many staff at KFW, the three conservation trust funds for their especially for, I believe, for PONT and Blue Action, for their state of for their age, are quite well funded, and so there has not been an instance where we have gone after the same pot of funding. Are there opportunities with Global Environment Facility potentially, or the Green Climate Fund? Yes, but NTA would not necessarily be involved in those applications, other than to potentially produce a budget or help with a report at some time.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks. So the next question that was posed is, CNF already had a staff when Nature Trust Alliance was formed. So what was the process of transitioning from the existing structure to the new shared services structure, and what happened to the CNF staff?
Well, in 2016, CNF was established in Paris. In 2016, there was this strategic movement back to Germany, because let's not forget that CNF is a German foundation. And with the movement of CNF from Paris to Germany, one employee from Paris joined here and actually started the whole office, but the rest remain in Paris. And one of the reasons to start NTA was also with this movement of CNF coming here and having no personnel, and PONT starting and having no personnel. So yeah, that's what it was.
So the next question that came up is whether you, from your experience, could this work with organizations in different countries? I think maybe not just doing work in different countries, but legally registered in different countries.
I think that one of our strong points is that the three foundations are German, and they have the same regulations to follow. And so here it's when we add value. If a rule changes and we find how this rule works, then we apply it to the three foundations. I believe that if you have foundations from different countries, they also need to have their bookkeeping in different countries, so you could not have one only provider for providing the bookkeeping. Same with the auditor, and you could only benefit from having this, like for example, the IT system. Yeah, it can be remotely, but I don't think it's a model to be used for funds established in different countries. So they should all be under the same governance.
Yeah, I think that the governance and reporting and compliance issues are, as well as language. I mean, we're a German organization. We report to German authorities. If we were to take on some, West African Francophile or NTA, some Francophile countries, who were registered maybe in somewhere in France, that would be a whole different type of organization, which NTA would provide services, but it would have potentially an outpost in France. And at this point, I think that's too complex of an endeavor. Perhaps at a certain point in years to come, that might be the evolution of an organization. I'm not saying NTA specifically, but an organization to become a bit more of a superstructure, that would be able to manage potentially various NTA-like organizations, ensure the communication and the information sharing. But I agree with you, Alba, that one of the reasons that NTA has been so quickly successful is that it's focused on the three CTFs here in Germany. Now, that's not to say that at a certain point NTA could not accept other German conservation trust funds or potentially trust funds that might have similar reporting requirements.
That's the plan, Geoff. That's the plan.
Okay, so a question about the staffing models within the three respective foundations. Do the three foundations have admin staff who are working sort of the counterparts to NTA, or do they only have technical staff? How many people are working in each foundation, and are they hired by NTA on behalf of the foundations, or are they hired by each foundation themselves?
The employees of each foundation, they are hired by the foundation itself. NTA can help on the recruitment process. And that's actually what we do. So for Blue Action, let's start with Blue Action. They are Germany. They have the office in Berlin, so they are 2 German employees sitting in Germany. So actually, NTA is helping them with the payroll and so on. And I would say that Blue Action doesn't have administrative staff. NTA is the administrative staff of Blue Action. Then for CNF, we have people in Georgia and people in Armenia, and they are basically focused on the program, but it's true that both offices have a part-time administrative assistants to help with the local requirements.
Yeah, and that's a point to stress. Those individuals are able to support us because they are local. They speak the languages, they know the legislation and the regulations. They're able to respond to requests, in real time. Whereas we from the Caucasus can do little when there is a request from a German authority, and that's what NTA can do, and one of the values that NTA provides.
And in the case of PONT, we have 3 people in Albania, and 2 of them are program, and 1 is also supporting the administration.
Great, thank you. So the next question that's come up is about the donor reports, and do you do the financial reporting for donors, or do you also do the technical sections as well?
From NTA, we helped to do the financial reports, and then when we work, for example, on the annual report, it's a jointly effort from executive directors plus NTA. The technical reports on the program, this is part of the program, and it's managed by the program. NTA, it's not involved on program reporting. And then, for example, to our donors, we do report financial situation, and then NTA provides with this data, and the technical part from the program is provided straight from the local people of the fund.
Great. The next question from Fensu. I'm just going to read this one. It says, I'm part of the CAFE network in Africa. We are presently looking at sustainability as a network, and it's not easy, as Camilla and some others know. Do you think that you are currently able to sustainably continue your work with your current approach and activities?
In terms of, I mean, there are a couple of questions in there. In terms of the 3 CTFs, and I know that's not the focus of the question, but as a bit of kind of context, I can say that the 3 CTFs, they have institutional support of the German governments for the last few years, and it's been a wonderful thing growing both the endowment capital, allowing us to invest it and earn interest off of that, as well as to be having sinking funds that are spent to cover operational costs and fund our program. I don't think that neither PONT nor CNF, who are set up for perpetuity, has enough foundation capital currently to be able to say we're completely self-sustainable. Blue Action is a bit of a different model in the sense that they are over a period of years. The purpose, of course, is for them to spend their money at a fairly rapid rate. But I believe the question was talking about the institutional sustainability of an organization like NTA, and I think at this state, because of the supports and the needs and the demands of the three CTFs, the current structure of NTA is quite sustainable.
Yeah, and at the end, we are the administrative expenses of the foundation. So as long as the foundations can run, we can run.
Thank you. Okay, another question that's posed around whether you have considered doing joint fundraising, fundraising for joint programs where all three foundations might implement.
There is no space for joint program. The three foundations have three different goals, and therefore jointly fundraising doesn't apply.
At a certain point, again, in the future, if there is an opportunity that made sense for the three organizations, we could think about that. But again, that's a decision that neither the three executive directors, maybe the three executive directors could make that decision. But I believe that higher levels institutionally would be involved in making that decision, because if it's, again, as trust funds, we are trying to grow, at least CNF and PONT are trying to grow our investments, our endowment capital primarily, rather than having a large grant program, which is more the approach of Blue Action. And so, due to the, again, different geographical but as well as programmatic natures of the three organizations, yeah, I think it's maybe not far-fetched, but I don't see it on the immediate horizon in any way.
And I just want to highlight a few comments that have come in the comment box. Miriam's pointing out that you could do joint fundraising for NTA, for running NTA, and Camilla's pointed out there could be knowledge management or capacity building projects, just building on what you were saying.
Yeah, but due to our legal status, we cannot give services to anyone. So it's like we cannot sell our knowledge because we are not allowed by law to generate any income. And therefore, this model cannot apply.
I am aware that we've gone a little bit over time. If you two have another moment or two, I just want to check to see if anyone else who's on the phone has any questions that we haven't, or on the phone or on the web, if anybody has any questions that we haven't had a chance to get to.
Of course,
okay, no problem.
Particularly the people who called in might not be able to type into these chat boxes.
There's several questions that I have. This is Barry Spergel.
Hi, Barry, go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, what is the total annual budget of NTA, like in terms of euro? And also, I was wondering, it sounds like the allocation among the three funds is based on the time spent. Well, I was wondering, suppose you have one fund which is just starting out, that needs a lot more time, but it's a small fund, whereas maybe a much larger fund like the Caucasus Fund, which has much greater resources, might not need that much time at this point. So would they be paying a lot less than the smaller new fund?
The budget of NTA is around 280,000 euros a year. So yeah, the allocation is by time of the fund, and when we have a new fund joining, they have the same, they have to pay according to the time. Even though it's a small fund, they have to have budget for administrative cost. When someone is planning a fund, the first year, it's not about program, it's more about setting up the fund. So the first expenses will all be administrative. And by joining NTA, these expenses would be smaller than if they would do it by themselves. But yeah, we could not give the negative impact to the other CTFs because it would not be fair.
Oh.
And Barry, when NTA was being established, the two founders, PONT and CNF, made a calculation over, I think, a period of 3 years, and maybe it was more of an estimation, and it was for 2016, 75% CNF, 25% PONT. 2017, I think it was something like 60% CNF, 40% now between the two organizations, and for 2018, and it's basically proved to be true, approximately 50% CNF time, and the other percentage of 50, it's 25, or maybe 20 to 30%, and then so we expect the same, a similar ratio in 2019.
So I was also wondering, would you be able to accommodate funds which have different investment policies?
Yeah. I think so, because that's actually what we have now. Blue Action has one investment policy, and CNF and PONT have another investment policy. Yeah. It would, of course, affect the effect in the fund would be better to join all together into one investment policy and one investment committee. So it would be probably more beneficial for the new foundation joining. But it works with having separate investment committees and investment policies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, I want to thank NTA, Geof, and Alba for doing this. This has been so informative and interesting. Excellently, you'll notice on the screen some email addresses for following up, I hope, with future questions.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone has any question, we are always available and open to answer them. And you can also follow us in Twitter or in LinkedIn, because there we usually post information. And yeah, so if you want to keep checking what we are doing, you can always follow us in Twitter or just contact us.
Great, thank you so much. We have also been recording this, so we'll get it up onto the CFA website for those who either want to revisit any point or want to share it with others. And Jeannie, if I can put you on the spot, can you let everyone know the next webinar that's coming up? I think is the CTIS on December 18th, but there might be one even sooner.
No, that's correct. The next one is the CTIS webinar on December 18th, and we have 2 different sessions. Let me pull up my correct calendar here. There's one session at 8 a.m. Eastern Time and one session at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So for anyone who is on the other side of the world and needs a webinar at a time that they're awake, we have that ready for you on the 18th.
Great. Thank you to everybody. We appreciate your participation, and we'll look forward to talking to you on the next one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, especially thank you, Alba.
Thank you, Geof.